What happens when America's sweetheart meets Hollywood's most unpredictable late-night host? You won't believe what unfolds when a simple promotional interview turns into television's most shocking confrontation of the year. Last night's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live delivered drama that no one saw coming, leaving viewers stunned and social media in absolute chaos. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when Jennifer Anniston faces off against Jimmy Kimmel in what can only be described as television history in the making. The studio audience erupted in their usual enthusiastic applause as Jennifer Anniston gracefully walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, her signature smile lighting up the room. She wore an elegant black blazer that perfectly complemented her blonde hair, styled in loose waves that caught the studio lights beautifully. The crowd's energy was palpable. After all, this was Jennifer Anniston, the beloved Friends star, promoting her latest project. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Anniston," Jimmy announced with his characteristic grin, standing to greet his guest with what appeared to be genuine warmth. The two exchanged the customary hug and air kisses before settling into their respective seats. Jimmy behind his desk, Jennifer in the guest chair that had hosted countless A-listers over the years. "Jennifer, welcome back to the show," Jimmy began, his tone carrying that familiar late-night host cadence. "You look absolutely stunning tonight, as always." "Thank you, Jimmy," Jennifer replied, her voice carrying that distinctive warmth that had made her America's favorite actress for decades. "It's always great to be here." But seasoned viewers of late-night television might have noticed something slightly different in Jimmy's demeanor tonight. His smile seemed a fraction too wide, his laugh a beat too quick. There was an underlying energy that suggested this wasn't going to be just another routine celebrity interview. "So you're here to talk about your new project," Jimmy continued, shuffling through his note cards with deliberate slowness. "But before we get to that, I have to ask, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, there's been a lot of talk lately about your personal life." Jennifer's smile faltered almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that lasted barely a second before her professional composure returned. "Well, Jimmy, I'm really here to focus on the work," she said diplomatically, her hands clasped elegantly in her lap. Right, of course," Jimmy nodded, but his eyes held a glint that suggested he wasn't quite ready to drop the subject. "It's just that, our audience loves you so much, and when there are rumors swirling around about relationships and personal drama, people are naturally curious." The studio audience remained engaged, but there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Jennifer's posture straightened slightly, her media-trained instincts clearly kicking in, as she sensed the direction this conversation might be heading. "I appreciate the interest," Jennifer responded carefully, "but I've always tried to keep my private life private. I think that's healthier for everyone involved." Jimmy leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting to something that looked almost predatory. "Come on, Jennifer, you're among friends here. The audience loves you. I love having you on the show. Can't we just have a real conversation for once?" The word "once" hung in the air with particular weight, and Jennifer's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. There was something in Jimmy's tone that suggested this wasn't just casual banter. There was an edge creeping in that made the veteran actress's guard go up completely. "I think we are having a real conversation, Jimmy," she replied, her voice maintaining its pleasant tone despite the growing tension. "About my work, which is why I'm here." But Jimmy wasn't backing down, and as the commercial break approached, viewers could sense that something unprecedented was building beneath the surface of what should have been a routine late-night interview. As they returned from commercial, the studio lights seemed harsher somehow, casting sharper shadows across both their faces. Jimmy's makeup artist had touched up his foundation, but nothing could disguise the calculating look that had settled in his eyes. Jennifer, meanwhile, had used the break to compose herself, sitting up straighter with her hands now folded more defensively. "And we're back with Jennifer Anniston," Jimmy announced to the camera, his voice carrying that forced enthusiasm that experienced television viewers know masks underlying tension. Before the break, we were talking about keeping things private. But Jennifer, I have to say, that's become quite the theme for you lately, hasn't it? Jennifer's smile became more strained. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jimmy. Well, Jimmy leaned forward, his elbows on his desk in a pose that seemed casual but felt aggressive. There's been a lot of speculation about your recent project. Choices, your statements about the industry, even your relationships with certain co-stars. Some people are saying you've become quite selective about what truths you're willing to share. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from celebrity interviews. There was something pointed, almost accusatory in Jimmy's tone that made even the most casual viewers sense they were witnessing something unusual. "Jimmy, I think there might be some confusion here," Jennifer replied, her professional mask beginning to slip slightly. "I've always been honest about my work and my career. If you have specific questions about my projects, I'm happy to discuss them." "Oh, I have specific questions, all right," Jimmy said, pulling out a tablet from behind his desk with theatrical flair. "Let's talk about your recent comments regarding working conditions in Hollywood. You've been quite vocal about certain practices, haven't you?" Jennifer's eyes flashed with something between surprise and anger. "Are you referring to my advocacy for fair treatment and respect on set? Because yes, I stand by those comments completely." "Fair treatment," Jimmy repeated, his voice dripping with mock contemplation. "That's interesting phrasing, because I've heard from some people in the industry that you've been making quite a few demands lately. Some might even say unreasonable demands." The studio audience was now completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond typical late-night television fodder. Jennifer's hands tightened in her lap, her knuckles white against the black fabric of her blazer. "I'm sorry, Jimmy, but I'm going to need you to be more specific about what you're implying," Jennifer said, her voice taking on a harder edge that her millions of fans had rarely heard. "Because if you're suggesting that asking for basic respect and professionalism is somehow unreasonable, then we have a very different understanding of what those words mean." Jimmy's grin widened, but there was nothing warm about it anymore. Basic respect, professionalism, these are interesting concepts coming from someone who, according to my sources, walked off a set just last month over what most people would consider minor disagreements. "Your sources?" Jennifer's voice rose slightly incredulous. "Jimmy, what exactly is happening here? I came on your show to promote my work, not to be ambushed with industry gossip and half-truths." The tension in the studio was now palpable, with crew members exchanging worried glances and the audience sitting in stunned silence. Jimmy seemed to be relishing the moment, leaning back in his chair with an expression of satisfaction that suggested this confrontation was exactly what he'd planned. "Ambushed?" Jimmy laughed, but the sound was cold and calculating. "Jennifer, this is late-night television. We ask the questions that people want answers to. And people want to know why America's sweetheart has suddenly become so difficult to work with." That last word, difficult, hung in the air like a slap, and everyone in the studio knew that Jimmy Kimmel had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Jennifer's face transformed in that moment, the practiced Hollywood smile completely disappearing as her eyes blazed with genuine anger. The silence in the studio stretched for what felt like an eternity before she spoke, her voice low and dangerous. "Difficult?" Jennifer repeated slowly, each syllable dripping with controlled fury. "Jimmy, let me tell you what's difficult. What's difficult is sitting here while you attempt to assassinate my character on national television based on unnamed sources and industry gossip." Jimmy's confident smirk faltered slightly, but he pressed forward with the reckless abandon of someone who had already committed to his path of destruction. "Jennifer, I'm just reporting what people in the industry are saying. If the shoe fits—" "The shoe fits?" Jennifer interrupted, her voice rising as decades of accumulated frustration with industry sexism came pouring out. "Do you know what that phrase really means, Jimmy? It means you're perpetuating the same tired stereotype that any woman who stands up for herself, who demands to be treated with respect, who refuses to accept substandard treatment, is automatically labeled as difficult. The studio audience was now completely transfixed, witnessing what was clearly becoming television history. Camera operators adjusted their shots, instinctively knowing they were capturing something unprecedented. Jimmy's producers in the control room were frantically whispering into their headsets, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this explosive moment play out. "Look, Jennifer," Jimmy said, attempting to regain control of the situation with a condescending tone that only made things worse. "I understand you're upset, but—" "Upset?" Jennifer stood up abruptly from her chair, her movement so sudden that it caused Jimmy to physically recoil. "I'm not upset, Jimmy. I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted that you would invite me onto your show under the pretense of promoting my work, only to ambush me with this character assassination." Jimmy's face flushed red as he realized the situation was spiraling completely beyond his control. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait." Jennifer's voice cut through his protest like a knife. "For over 3 decades, I have conducted myself with professionalism and integrity in this industry. I have treated every crew member, every co-star, every director with respect. And when I ask for that same respect in return, when I advocate for fair working conditions not just for myself but for everyone on set, I get labeled as difficult by people like you." The camera captured every emotion playing across Jennifer's face: the hurt, the anger, the disappointment, and something else. A steely determination that suggested she was done playing by the old rules of Hollywood diplomacy. Jimmy attempted to salvage the situation with a nervous laugh. "Jennifer, I think you're overreacting here. This is just television. We're just having a conversation." "Just television." Jennifer's voice rose to a level that silenced every person in that studio. "Jimmy, you just suggested to millions of viewers that I'm some kind of diva who makes unreasonable demands. You've attacked my reputation, my professionalism, and my character based on what you claim are anonymous industry sources. This isn't just television. This is my livelihood, my legacy, my life's work that you're casually destroying for ratings." The raw emotion in her voice was palpable, and even some of the hardened crew members looked uncomfortable witnessing this level of genuine distress. Jimmy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, clearly realizing he had vastly underestimated both Jennifer's resolve and the public relations nightmare he had just created for himself. "I have worked with hundreds of people over the years," Jennifer continued, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "And if you can find even one person who will go on record saying I was genuinely difficult to work with, rather than simply standing up for basic human dignity, then I'll apologize right here on your show." Jimmy's silence spoke volumes. His confident demeanor had completely crumbled, replaced by the dawning realization that he had not only miscalculated Jennifer's response but had also exposed himself as someone willing to traffic in unsubstantiated rumors for entertainment value. "That's what I thought," Jennifer said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm that was somehow more terrifying than her earlier anger. "You can't, because those sources don't exist, do they, Jimmy?" The question hung in the air like an indictment, and everyone in that studio knew they were witnessing the complete dismantling of a late-night host's credibility in real time. Jimmy's face had gone from red to ashen pale, beads of sweat visible on his forehead under the harsh studio lights. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled through his note cards, desperately searching for some scripted response that could salvage this catastrophic situation. But there was no coming back from what he had unleashed. "Jennifer, Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here," Jimmy stammered, his usual confidence completely evaporated. "I was just trying to—" "Trying to what?" Jennifer's voice cut through his pathetic attempt at damage control like a scalpel. "Trying to humiliate me? Trying to perpetuate harmful stereotypes about women in this industry? Or were you just trying to create a viral moment at my expense?" The studio audience sat in stunned silence, many of them pulling out their phones to capture this unprecedented moment. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a public reckoning, and everyone present understood they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Jimmy's eyes darted toward his. Producers in the control booth silently pleading for someone to cut to commercial, to end this nightmare. But his producers seemed frozen, equally mesmerized and horrified by the spectacle unfolding before them. The ratings were probably through the roof, but at what cost? "You know what the real tragedy is here, Jimmy?" Jennifer continued, her voice now carrying a weight of disappointment that somehow cut deeper than her earlier anger. "I actually used to respect you. I thought you were different from some of the other hosts. I thought you understood the responsibility that comes with this platform." Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but Jennifer held up her hand, stopping him cold. "But sitting here tonight, watching you peddle gossip and character assassination, disguised as entertainment, I realize I was completely wrong about you. You're not a comedian or a talk show host. You're a bully with a microphone and a captive audience." The word bully hit Jimmy like a physical blow. His mouth hung open as he struggled to form words, any words, that might somehow repair the irreparable damage he had inflicted upon both Jennifer and himself. "I have been in this business for over 30 years, Jennifer continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I have survived network politics, tabloid scrutiny, and every form of industry sexism you can imagine. But I have never, not once, sat across from someone who so blatantly disrespected not just me, but every woman who has ever been labeled difficult for standing up for herself." A murmur rippled through the studio audience, a mixture of gasps and whispered approval. Several audience members were openly filming with their phones now, understanding that they were witnessing television history in the making. Jimmy finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Jennifer, please. I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Jennifer's laugh was bitter and cold. "Jimmy, the only misunderstanding here is that I thought I was coming on a legitimate talk show, not a tabloid ambush disguised as entertainment. You've made your intentions crystal clear." The camera zoomed in on Jimmy's face, capturing every bead of sweat, every nervous twitch, every sign of a man who had completely lost control of his own show. His usual quick wit had abandoned him entirely, leaving him exposed and vulnerable in front of millions of viewers. "I trusted you," Jennifer said, and those 4 words carried more weight than all her previous accusations combined. "I trusted you to treat me with basic human decency, and you violated that trust in the most public way possible. You've shown your true character tonight, Jimmy, and it's ugly." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the crew members had stopped their usual behind-the-scenes movements, everyone transfixed by the complete destruction of what should have been a routine celebrity interview. Jimmy made one last desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. "Jennifer, if we could just—" "No." Jennifer's single word cut through his plea with finality. "We're done here. I won't sit here for another second and pretend this is acceptable behavior from anyone, let alone someone with your platform and influence." She stood up again, this time with purpose, gathering her purse from beside her chair. The movement sent a ripple of anticipation through the studio. Everyone could sense that something monumental was about to happen, something that would define this moment in television history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jennifer addressed the camera directly, bypassing Jimmy entirely. "I want you to remember this moment. Remember what happens when someone uses their platform to spread rumors and attack someone's character for entertainment. Value." Jimmy sat frozen in his chair, completely powerless to stop the inevitable conclusion of his own making. Jennifer turned back to face Jimmy one final time, her eyes blazing with a mixture of disappointment and righteous fury that would be seared into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. The studio lights caught the unshed tears in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but tears of anger at the injustice of what had just transpired. "Jimmy," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 decades in Hollywood, "I hope the ratings were worth your integrity." With that devastating final blow, Jennifer Anniston turned on her heel and began walking toward the exit. The sound of her heels clicking against the studio floor echoed through the dead silence like gunshots. Every step was deliberate, dignified, and final. Jimmy finally found his voice, desperation making him call out across the studio. "Jennifer, wait! Please, let's talk about this off camera. We can work this out." She paused at the edge of the stage, turning back just enough for the camera to catch her profile. "There's nothing to work out, Jimmy. You've shown millions of people exactly who you are. Own it." The studio audience began to murmur, some breaking into spontaneous applause for Jennifer's courage. The sound grew louder, building into a thunderous ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Several audience members stood up, their applause becoming more enthusiastic with each passing second. Jimmy's face contorted with a mixture of panic and rage. He had lost complete control of his own show, and now his own audience was applauding his guest's exit. "Cut to commercial," he shouted toward the control booth, his voice cracking with stress. "Cut to commercial right now." But it was too late. Jennifer had already reached the exit, and as she pushed through the studio doors, she delivered one final statement that would echo through entertainment history. "To everyone watching at home," she said, turning back to face the camera one last time, "never let anyone make you feel like standing up for yourself makes you difficult. Respect is not a privilege, it's a right." The doors closed behind her with a resounding thud that seemed to punctuate the end of an era. The studio audience erupted into chaos, with some people cheering, others gasping in shock, and many frantically texting or posting on social media about what they had just witnessed. Jimmy sat behind his desk, his face a mask of humiliation and defeat. His hands shook as he attempted to shuffle his note cards, but the papers scattered across the desk like his shattered credibility. The confident, smirking host who had begun. The interview was gone, replaced by a man who had just committed career suicide on live television. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jimmy stammered into the camera, his voice barely audible over the continued audience reaction, "we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with... But there was no with. There was no coming back from what had just happened. The show limped through its remaining segments with Jimmy appearing visibly shaken, his usual comedic timing completely destroyed by the weight of his own actions. As news of the confrontation spread across social media in real time, hashtags like Jennifer Anniston Truth and Respect, Not Difficult began trending worldwide. Video clips of the confrontation were shared millions of times within hours, with overwhelming support pouring in for Jennifer's courageous stand against industry sexism and bullying. The next morning, entertainment news outlets led with the story. Industry professionals came forward to share their own experiences with similar treatment, and many praised Jennifer for using her platform to call out behavior that had been tolerated for far too long. The conversation she had sparked went far, beyond one late-night show, igniting a broader discussion about respect, professionalism, and the double standards faced by women in entertainment. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings plummeted in the weeks following the incident. Advertisers began pulling their support, and industry insiders quietly distanced themselves from the host who had so spectacularly destroyed his own reputation. His attempts at apologies fell flat, seen as damage control rather than genuine remorse. Meanwhile, Jennifer Aniston's career experienced a remarkable surge. The dignity and strength she had displayed during the confrontation resonated with audiences worldwide, leading to new project offers and renewed respect from industry peers. Her refusal to accept disrespectful treatment had not only protected her own integrity but had also paved the way for others to demand better. The confrontation that night had lasted less than 20 minutes, but its impact would be felt for years to come. It served as a stark reminder that in an industry built on image and reputation, character matters more than clever comebacks, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away with your dignity intact. Jennifer Anniston had entered that studio as a guest promoting her latest project. She left as a symbol of strength, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right, regardless of the cost.